Good evening, Laredo. Welcome to another episode of the Texas Border Chronicles. This is a community affairs program with local community leaders discussing issues affecting the Laredo area. Hi, I'm Chuy Garza, your host. We do have, of course, our colleague here, Juan Rodriquez, and of course,
Glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. We're very lucky to have a good conversation here, hopefully with our Congressman, Henry Cuellar. Thank you for joining us. I know you've been very busy.
It has. It's been a busy time in Washington. You know, the way I divide everything, Judge, is there are 4 tracks of things that we have to do in Washington. The first track is the impeachment inquiry. And I'm not in any particular order. I'm just listing them out. Impeachment inquiry, track 1. Track number 2 is the trade agreement that we have to pass, because that's so important for us in Mexico. Track number 3 is the appropriation bill, and that's another one that I'm focused on. I'm focused on trade and the appropriations. And then track number 4 is everything else. That's anything else that we have to do is track number 4. So that's a way, in my mind, I categorize 4 different things that have to be addressed, and really just 3 weeks before the year's over. So we really have 3 weeks in December after Thanksgiving.
And everything's lining up now. I mean, everything's, you've got the impeachment going on, you got the funding issues. All those things need to be resolved before a certain time.
All within a short period of time.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest issues, of course, is the impeachment inquiry.
Right.
What is going on? What is the status?
You know, the first thing, if you look at the impeachment, first you got to get information. You know, there are some people that have contacted me and said, impeach him right now. And then there are some people on the other side that said, oh, no, don't impeach him. But the way I look at it is, just as a judge, what you do is you look at the evidence, and then you make a decision. But you have to present the evidence. So right now, what's being presented, as you saw some very powerful witnesses that were there that went ahead and testified. So we're in the evidence document collection process right now. If they decide to move on, the committee, then they go from the Intelligence Committee to the Judiciary, where there at that time they would have to draft articles of impeachment. And then if they move forward and then they pass it from the Judiciary, then there's a vote on the House floor where everybody gets a vote.
That's right.
And then it's sent over to the Senate where they have the trial. So the whole process right now is the House will take some action, and then the Senate. Now, there's been 2 other impeachment procedures in the past, 2 other presidents. And what we've seen in the past is 2 presidents have been impeached. And then when it comes over to get 67 senators out of 100, it's very, very hard. And so there's been no conviction.
So basically what you're saying is, even though if the House does impeach, the Senate then has to have a trial. And there's... that's another process.
Yeah.
And it might not pass.
Yeah, I guess the best way to present this, the House does impeachment, which is basically, hey, we're going to convict you. Then you go before the Senate, and there's a trial.
Right.
And they'll go through the same thing on that. And then it's a trial. Then they vote on it with the Supreme Court Justice presiding. Then they vote on it. But I'm just saying that historically, to get 67 out of 100 senators, the last 2 times it's been tried, it hasn't passed.
Right. We'll be right back with Congressman Cuellar in a few minutes.
Serious car collisions require personal attention, an attorney who's experienced and can finish the case without referring it out. If you are involved in a serious car collision, call Joey Diaz, because serious car collisions require a serious and effective attorney.
Welcome back to the show. We have Congressman Cuellar, who's here to answer a few questions about what's going on in Washington. Obviously, the biggest question and one of the biggest issues is the USMCA treaty. What is the status there?
You know, I'm the congressman that's been counting the Democrat votes. And I would tell you this, that with the Republican votes and the Democrats that are already saying that they're going to vote, we have the votes to pass it. But what Pelosi's doing is, there's about 242 Democrats, and she wants to get a broader amount of Democrats to support it. So therefore, there's 4 issues that the Democrats have been looking at: labor reform, which Mexico has done historic reform. They've done extremely well, and in fact, Democrats should be celebrating, because if you look at what was done in NAFTA 1.0, the original NAFTA. None of that was there. Now Mexico has stepped over it. So it's the labor reform, enforcement, pharmaceutical, and environment. I would tell you also that on the enforcement, last night I was talking to the Mexican officials, and as you know, their Congress just passed the budget. The amount of money they originally had when Pelosi and I met with them, compared to what they sent a letter, that the president sent a letter just about a month ago, to what they passed, they have increased the amount. The largest amount of money so they can enforce the law. So this will be good for the workers down there. And then the environment, I've been working with NatBank, and in fact, I got Pelosi to agree to put the NatBank, which does environmental, to help clean the Rio. As you know, the biggest project they ever did in Laredo was the waste treatment plant in Nuevo Laredo. And so
I think you were part of that.
I was part. I had the legislation to get 5% from the state
that was
level.
20 years ago.
Exactly. So we're working on that, and the other was pharmaceutical prices also. So we're very close to getting this done. And again, I'm hoping, and I spoke to Pelosi's office yesterday. I said, hey, let's have a vote on this in December, and hopefully we can. And then I also spoke to the Secretary of Foreign, the Foreign Minister in Mexico, because they're very interested in getting this done. In fact, I'll be following up with them on Monday on this conversation. I'll be talking to the U.S. Trade Representative actually later today, Leisheiser, to make sure we can close this, because I want to have a vote. $1.7 billion every day between the U.S. and Mexico. Double that with Canada. That's over $1 million every day. All you have to do is look around the warehouses or trucking companies and the custom brokers and all that. It's jobs, jobs, jobs. 5 million jobs are created in the United States because of Mexico. I've met so many companies from Mexico that this is good for them. It's good for us. And let me say this. Sometimes people think that the only ones that are going to benefit out of this are the big companies. But if you look at the Department of Commerce, most of the people involved in trade are small medium-sized companies. And where are most jobs created? In small, medium-sized companies. So it's going to be good for us. Finally, let me just say this. I also feel that this will be definitely, we know it's going to be good for us, but CBP estimates that 5 to maybe 10% increases if we get this trade agreement done. The options are very simple. This is what I've been telling my Democratic friends, the ones that hesitate on this. One, we can repeal it the way the president wanted, which I think it's wrong, because then you go into the WTO rules.
Right.
Two, we can keep the status quo. And I tell the Democrats, if you're going to vote no, you're voting for the status quo back in the 1990s. Or the third option, get NAFTA 1.0, make it into a NAFTA 2.0, and it's a better, improved NAFTA, and I'd rather have this new, improved NAFTA. The president can call it whatever he wants to. It's still NAFTA. 95% of it is NAFTA. That's what it is, bottom line. It's good for our economy.
You think that with this all things that are happening in Mexico, the violence with drug cartels and all that, is not going to be affecting this deal, this treaty? In this process?
Yeah, I've talked to the Mexican officials, including the ambassador, the Mexican ambassador, who will be here as a Señor International. Mr. South Texas. And I said, look, we're concerned about the violence in Mexico. We got to get this trade agreement done first. But on the violence, I've said this over and over again. I said it to President Calderon. I've said it to Peña Nieto. I've said it to this new current administration. With all due respects, hugs and kisses are not going to stop what's happening over there, quite honestly, in my opinion. The U.S. will help Mexico as far as they want us to help them. Bottom line. But we can do a lot more. I'll put it this way. If there's a fire and somebody wants to put that fire, doesn't matter who that fireman is, I mean, does it really matter? No. People want
Well,
to
it
have
does
that
to
fight.
you from another country. I think
Well, yeah.
those people in Mexico certainly are very, they want the sovereignty
I agree.
to be respected.
I
And for the
agree.
most part, it's been respected.
Yes, and I
So-
agree. And every time I talk to our Mexican friends, I always say, respetamos la soberanía. I always say that because I know that's very important. I respect their sovereignty, but I think they should be able to work with it. So we
Yes.
are doing a lot to help them. You know, if you look at the intelligence, how they get some of the high target assets, they do it because, a lot of it because of our intelligence, but we can do a lot more.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with Congressman Cuellar.
I'm Sergio Lozano, and your problem is my problem.
De parte de todos aquí en Champion Care, feliz Día de Acción de Gracias.
Thank you for joining us again. We have our Congressman Cuellar here. We're actually going to ask him about the wall now, the border
Yes.
wall.
Yeah, at this time, how's the border wall is building in this South Texas area?
Yeah, let me give you the status right now. In the appropriations House side, we have $0 for the wall. Zero. Not a single penny. And
For the new budget.
that's correct. And also, I added language because I said on Homeland, but I also said on the defense appropriations, both appropriations. On the defense appropriations, I added my language along with other members to say, do not take the money away from the military, because as you know, he's trying to take $3.5 billion from the military. Then he's trying to take some money from forfeiture funds. So he's trying to take over $5 billion.
And that's part of the declaration of emergency that.
Well, yeah, and there is no emergency. I mean, there's no emergency. If you recall, it went on and on and on. Congress came up, he came out of Congress. He didn't get what he wanted. As soon as he didn't get what he wanted, he signed the bill, and then he did what? He declared an emergency. An emergency is supposed to be something sudden, not wait a year to see what you get, and then you declare an emergency. So bottom line is, House side has $0 for funding, for a wall, for a fence, and it stops the military from being raided, the money that he's taken. And then on the Senate side, and this is what I tell my folks, look at what the Senate's doing. The Senate has $5 billion. And they have no limitations, which means that they can take the $3.5 billion from the military and from the forfeiture funds. So they technically have over $10 billion. We have zero. So now the question is, once we get to that part, what are the Republican senators or the president's going to do on that? Because there are 12 different appropriation bills. I'm hoping that we can go ahead and get the other appropriation bills, education, transportation, healthcare, pass those so we don't have to deal with that, because at the end we have to figure out what's going to happen with the wall funding. Now, the last time the president wanted over $5 billion, we were able to hold him down to $1.3 billion. Otherwise, the government would have shut down. I was able to add language. First time ever, I added language, and this was the last thing that held up the appropriations back in February, the 35-day that the president had the shutdown. I put language to protect SpaceX. I mean, you can have rockets going out with that. SpaceX, Santa Ana Wildlife. Put language to protect the Benson State Park. Put language there for the
So you were able to
for
put
the
in-
chapel,
Down in-
and the Butterfly Center. And I know
Dislocated in.
yeah, this is all in Hidalgo.
In Hidalgo.
And then in Stark County, I added language also to say that they have to sit down with the community to talk about if there is going to be some infrastructure on the design and the alignment of it. Where do you put it? Because the river goes this way, and Border Patrol usually wants to just go a straight line. Now, what they're trying to do here in Webb County, it is the military money. The 3.5, they want to use about $1.1 billion out of the 3.5. So they want to take money from my northern district, the military bases I have in San Antonio, and they want to take it over here and use the 1.1 out of the 3.5 billion to build the fence here.
Webb County.
Now, in Webb County. Now, they started off first, we're going to do from the Columbia Bridge up to Maverick County. Now we hear different things, and there's a lot of conflict in information because, in fact, just this week we had an appropriation meeting, Homeland, with the Border Patrol. In their mind, they think they have $8.5 billion, and we're saying no. That military money, we're still
under litigation.
Yeah, it's under litigation, so you can't
use
say
it,
that.
can't say
But
it.
in their mind, they think have this money. You ask them right now, they don't have the money, but they're taking the position, they're acting. I mean, basically, I tell people don't sign. Because these are private property rights.
Certainly, those are very good issues. We're gonna, I think we're gonna have to sit down and talk to you later about all those
Okay.
issues. Thank you for being here. We're gonna be right back after this short break. Welcome back to the show. We have Congressman Cuellar here. The issue of gun violence is an issue that's been affecting the whole country for quite a few years. I believe the latest figures that we have from the Gun Archives nonprofit organization, who produced an updated version, they said there's been at least 369 mass shootings in the United States this year alone. That's 4 people being shot or more. And then, of course, in your district, I believe Southern Springs has been the only one. Last year. There was a mass shooting that occurred. Several people were killed. President Trump said he was going to produce a gun legislation in September. So far, we haven't seen it. Is it coming?
The president has said so many things he's going to do, and he doesn't carry them through. So what we did in the House is we passed a background check. I supported the background check because I believe in the Second Amendment, and in anybody that doesn't believe in the Second Amendment, you got to respect all the amendments. You don't choose and pick the amendments. Mm-hmm. But I want to see responsible gun ownership. That's why we passed the background check, and it's over there in the Senate. But the Senate hasn't moved on it. We've been asking them to pass
More
it.
than 70% of the people support national background check. So
Right,
it's something
yeah.
that even Republicans, independents support it. So I don't know what the...
So why has the president, we've done our work in the House, why has the president not done it? Why has the Senate not moved on it? The other thing is, we also did, it was very interesting, you met at Sutherland Springs.
Right.
In fact, just recently, we got the monies to help some of the victims there. We also did there, that was very interesting, is that Senator Cornyn and myself, in a bipartisan way, we were able to pass the Fix Next, which is, making sure that if somebody has a problem, you get that information. That person, that veteran that shot the churchgoers, he had at least four different times where the military should have stopped him on that, and they didn't do that. So we now have added money. We changed the language. It was my legislation on the House side, and Senator Cornyn.
He had issues with the military.
He had issues, yeah.
And it was
so,
never taken care of by the military
yeah,
before.
and let me just say one thing about guns. I want you to understand. I represent a very diverse district, very diverse district. Mm-hmm. I took Representative Castro, Joaquin Castro, on the 1-year anniversary. It was a Sunday afternoon. And there at the church, 1-year anniversary, Joaquin was a little surprised by this. There were people with guns. There were people with concealed weapons. And he was looking at me. I said, welcome to my district. This is at Sutherland Springs. In fact, the person that got the bad guy was there with open carry because they feel there in that area that it wasn't with somebody with a responsible gun, they would have had a worse situation. So I say this because sometimes the Second Amendment becomes a little emotional and people start saying things. But again, the Second Amendment, unless if somebody repeals that, is part of the Constitution.
Right, and it's always
responsible gun ownership. One of the things I've talked with the Mexicanos are two things. One, they want the trade agreement done, but the other thing is, and I'm looking at legislation to stop those heavy weapons that are going south that the bad guys are using. Most of the weapons there are about over 80, 85% are American, and about 40% of them are from Texas area. So we're looking at trying to see if we can do checks on southbound so we can stop cash and guns from going south. We passed the DREAM Act. We haven't talked about Dreamers. We passed it in the House. This is the second time we passed it. We passed it in 2008, I think, and now we just passed it. The DREAM Act to protect them. It's in the Senate. It hasn't moved. We passed the background checks. It's on the Senate. It has not passed. So we have done our jobs, but we need the Senate to help us out. And the president who says he was going to pass the background checks, nothing.
And where's the problem with the Senate? I mean, there's any way they can, force them to work on some,
well,
these issues?
It's up
there's
to
a lot. I mean, there's
it's a
been
senators.
accumulated.
Yeah, I mean, it's the DREAM Act. People that believe in the DREAM Act, House has done its work. We got to get the Senate pass it. Background check. We've done our work. People have to convince that. The wall is not up to the mayor or to myself. That is right now in the Senate. And I tell some of the folks here to go talk to the senators. Don't be afraid to talk to the senator. Don't be afraid to talk to Republicans. The issue are those folks on the Senate side. And unfortunately, sometimes they'll go to the mayor. They'll come to my office. I say, guys, this is not the problem. The problem is on the Senate. I gave you at least 3 bills that we passed, but we're still waiting for the Senate.
There's no way to first then.
No, it's up to them
put
to
them
say.
to work.
It's up to them to decide to vote on it.
We'll be right back. We'll finish it up in a few minutes. We'll be right back.
De parte de todos aquí en Champion Care, feliz Día de Acción de Gracias.
I'm Sergio Lozano, and your problem is my problem.
Welcome back to the show. We have Congressman Cuellar here, still answering our questions. We appreciate the time that you made for it. I want to talk about 2 more topics that are left before we close up. And the first one, of course, is the issue of women with a Paycheck Fairness Act, which you were, in fact, involved in. You co-sponsored the bill. Explain to the public what that is.
It's very simple. If a man makes $1, that woman should get paid $1. Why is it that when a man gets paid $1, they'll get about 57 cents on the dollar? That's not right. I got 2 daughters. I want to make sure they get paid like everybody.
The bill says that women, Mexican American women get 54%.
Yeah, well,
of the dollar, so 54 cents.
Yeah, well, certain groups make less, but you're right about that. But it's average about 57 cents, about 57, 54 cents. So whatever it is, it's not $1. And we got to make sure they get paid the same.
Equal.
They get paid equal. So I've worked with Rosa DeLauro, a very liberal person from Connecticut. I'm a more moderate Democrat. So we work together because we agree on that. Same thing on the Equal Rights Amendment. We got to get that passed. Women should have equal rights in the Constitution.
It's important that I let the public know that the Equal Rights Amendment was proposed to the Congress back in 1972. 37 states have passed it. They need 1 more state to pass it. Texas already passed it. It's expected probably to pass maybe in January by the state of Virginia.
That's correct.
So
Yes.
what happens then? What does it? It basically reads that no one shall be discriminated against. They will not be discriminated against by their sex.
Yeah.
That's really the bottom line.
The way it should be is we should not discriminate on color, on religion, or sex, and we got to make sure that women are treated the same, and it should be part of the Constitution.
If it does happen, that's going to change many of the dynamics, because does it mean then that we're going to spend as much money that we spend on men's sports to women's sports, possibly?
Well,
does it mean that we're going to spend as much money for certain types of male-dominated areas to women? I mean, that's an issue that's going to be...
Well, I used to chair higher education in the state of Texas, and my thing is, I would hear that argument. I said, it doesn't matter. Just give everybody the same equal rights. That's it. And if you have to spend a little bit more here, then you do what you need to do. That's a decision that universities...
Well, I do want to make it a point that Equal Rights Amendment goes to government. The Paycheck Fairness is the one that you voted for.
Right.
Is really private companies taking
Right.
care of that. So really,
Right.
you're dealing with that issue, that type of equality for women on both.
Yeah, but the equal rights, once you put it in part of the Constitution, it applies to public and private sector. I mean, basically, then attorneys can use that as an argument, saying, "Hey, it's part of the Constitution. You can, we can expand that on that." So, bottom line is, we need to pass the Equal Rights Amendment and the pay fairness, the check fairness for women. We have worked on legislation. In fact, we passed legislation to make sure that regardless of your sexual orientation, that you're treated the same.
So there
should be no discrimination.
At all.
No discrimination. And I know we've had legislation that we've supported because, again, why should you be discriminated on that? So everybody should be treated
It's
the
very
same.
possible to extend it then to them as well.
Yeah.
After this next election is over with, whether President Trump wins or loses or someone else takes over, do you think that what has happened the last 3 years in not only our community but in the whole country, do you see a change happening? Will it go back to the way it used to be, or is this the new normal where we have polarization of the parties?
This cannot be the normal. It cannot be the normal. We have lost our civility. Even in campaigns, I mean, look at people, the way they talk. People used to talk about issues. Now it's attack, 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 attack. That civility is gone from the president down. And when especially the president uses certain words, I mean, remember how he started the campaign? When he was going down the elevator in Trump Tower, he said, he started off with, Mexicans are rapists and murderers. I mean, do you start off a campaign that way? So yes, I'm hoping that after a new president comes in November, a year from now, that we bring back the civility where people can sit down. You know, we used to say, I'm very bipartisan. Very bipartisan. That's the only way you get things done. I'm a Democrat, but I don't represent the party. I've been a Democrat for years, but I believe in bipartisanship. Right now, there are people that said, no, support the party 100%, or support the Republican Party 100%. If I do that, I won't be able to bring the millions of dollars I bring down to our area if you're so partisan. Look at the people that are partisan right now in D.C. without mentioning them members. You know some of those members of Congress. Zero. They haven't done it because all they do is they just want to fight. My job is to be as bipartisan to get results done over here. The civility part of it, why is it that it's wrong to talk to the other party? Why? What's wrong with that? And that civility starts at the very top. We need to bring that civility. We need to be able to, what we were taught in pre-K, the golden rules, treat everybody the way you want to be respected.
Thank you very much, Congressman.
Hey,
thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
wanna
And by the
thank-
way, I like the casual look that
Maybe
y'all
we
have.
should do more often. I want to thank you again for listening. I want to thank KJS for sponsoring us and, of course, our local sponsors as well. Until next weekend, have a blessed weekend.